Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. In the past, when I introduced my boyfriend to my dad, he didn't have much of a reaction. He didn't really appreciate my choice, but also didn't openly condemn me for it. Even when I asked him directly about what he thought about Jason, he said he's okay as long as I'm okay. But at that time, it was good enough for me, so I didn't push him. Now, 2 years later, my boyfriend is my fiance. When I first told him about being engaged, he was quite surprised. He said that he didn't think my relationship would last for that long, and that's why he didn't really express his opinion about the guy I was dating. But now that I dropped this big of a bomb on him, he's more disappointed than anything else. He said that as his only child who's still in contact with him, he expected me to do better or find someone who'd actually take care of our business for him later on. Instead, I found a guy who is an artist and works on contract basis. I didn't even think for once that my dad could actually think something so unreasonable and pointless. If he really needs someone to take over the family business, then I'm right here. Why would I fall in love and marry just to bring a business partner in the family? So we ended up fighting about our differences. I tried to convince him to see my view of things. The guy might not be a budding manager, but he's an amazing, humble guy who takes care of me before anything else. Our vibes matched the first time we met, and ever since, hardly a day has passed when I didn't laugh. So, in my opinion, I don't think I can find anyone better than him. But no matter what I said, my dad just wouldn't agree with my choice. In the end, I gave up on trying to convince him and moved on with my life, and now I have only 3 weeks left until my wedding day. I have already sent out the invitations and received an RSVP on almost all of them. The preparations for the wedding were in full swing, and last week I received a call from my dad. I thought it was about him confirming his invite to the wedding, but instead he said something that crushed me completely. I was thinking the worst thing he could do was to not come to the wedding, but I was so wrong. He told me that after our fight, he really thought I understood what he wanted to express, and that as his daughter, I would show at least some respect to his opinions. But me sending him an invitation directly without even hinting that they'll be coming told him how I don't care about what he thinks or does at all. He said that as much as it saddened him to realize his only child that stayed with him is nothing more than just another person passing through his life, he made his choice about the future. He told me I made a huge mistake by totally disregarding his advice, and now he's going to make sure I suffer the consequences before hanging up. I was anxious and panicked after that. If it was just about him not coming to the wedding or not liking my partner, I could have dealt with him. But by the way he sounded, it seemed like he's ending our whole father daughter relationship. When I told my fiance about it, he advised me to go and meet him in person. So I went to his office the next day. I was so anxious that I forgot to make an appointment and went in unannounced. What I saw was like a dream and a nightmare at the same time. My mom was sitting across from my dad, and they were talking about my dad's business. So, for context, my parents got divorced when I was 10 with an elder brother and sister in their teens. Instead of taking care of the custody by themselves, our parents told us the truth about their situation and asked us to choose who we want to live with. My siblings chose mom, but I stayed behind with my dad. Growing up, I didn't have that great of a relationship with mom, and even after their divorce, we barely talked. By the time I graduated, I was completely disconnected from her, and today was the first day I saw her in years. She took my siblings to New Zealand, and we ended up being almost strangers. So you can understand the shock of seeing my mom talking casually with my dad as if the last 15 years or so didn't happen. I asked Dad what was going on and what the deal was that they were talking about. He said, now that I've chosen my fiance over my family, he cannot trust me to take care of his lifelong work, and he is trying to find someone who would be capable enough to do this for him. He told me that because I have my own life where his opinions or advice aren't valued, he has decided to let me go off on my own and cut me off from his will. He was just talking to Mom about my other two siblings, whom he hasn't met in ages, and wanted to know which one of them would be better equipped to take over after him. By the time I arrived, they were done talking, so I had no idea which child they were discussing about. But the last few things I heard, it seems like he needed Mom to convince my brother or sister, whoever it is, to come under him for a while and learn how things work directly from him. It would be an understatement to say that I was just angry. There was no limit to the rage inside of me. My dad didn't only reject the guy I chose over a pointless thing, he went as far as to cut me off from the family inheritance. I still haven't processed the whole thing, and when I told my husband about how I quietly walked out of his office after hearing his plans, he actually told me I should have made my feelings clear to my dad instead of taking the high road. I don't know if walking away silently was the best move or not, but I think that my dad's reason for reacting in such an extreme way was not valid. Do you guys also think he's being an a-hole here, or do people actually marry only when their parents approve? It's been ages since I talked to one of my siblings, and yesterday, out of nowhere, I received a call from my sister. I didn't even recognize her voice, and I don't know why, but the first thing that came to mind was wondering what it feels like to grow up with brothers and sisters. Like, I had them for 10 years of my life, and it wasn't any different than living alone at that time, so I shouldn't even be thinking about such useless and impossible things. Anyway, I asked her how she is, and she tried to make small talk before asking me if I'm free to meet her over the weekend. She said that she moved back to the US for her job and would like to talk to me. We decided on meeting on Sundays afternoon, and holy heck, I'm so nervous. And for what? It feels like I'm going to meet a stranger, even though she's blood related. It's just weird for some reason. Anyway, I'll update here once again after I meet her. So I met my sister today, and I did not expect that she'll be looking very fine. I was expecting a slightly better version of me, but man, I almost fell in love with her after meeting her. If we were actually strangers, I would have definitely liked to be her friend. So we met, and it was really awkward at first. Like, it was so bad that we talked about our hairstyle. But when it was too much for me to handle, I decided to be direct and ask her a reason for meeting me before I bolt out of the restaurant. She told me that the real reason she called me was because she recently received a strange request from our mom. She was asked to move in with dad for a while, or if that's too uncomfortable for her, then at least to move near his house so he could teach her about the family business. So now I knew the mysterious sibling my parents were talking away. My sister continued and asked why I was not taking over, so I told her about my wedding and how Dad had cut me off to teach me a lesson or something because his pride was hurt. My sister was understandably perplexed, and I was pleased to see that she was pointing out the same thing that I mentioned the first time I heard about Dad's BS. We sat there for about an hour before leaving, and she told me she's going to deny Mom's request because she wants nothing to do with the business or Dad. I was so excited that our vibes matched so immaculately that I asked her to come to my wedding before my awkwardness took over, and she looked quite happy after receiving an invitation. Now I'm just dreading Dad's reaction when he'll find out how big of a nuisance I am for his life. I'm finally a wifey now, like actually married. It still feels like a dream, especially because both my sister and my brother came to my wedding. I saw them after years, but yet it felt like they only added to my happiness. That was almost a month ago, though. Today, my dad called me again, and not even 2 hours ago, and he was really mad. He told me that he found out I was the one who ruined his plans to bring another of my siblings to take care of the business after he's gone, and I proudly told him it was indeed because of my actions. He went on to shout profanities and talk shit to me for still being a hindrance in his life, and I told him that he should be happy now because I'm a married woman now, and my husband would make sure I am too busy being loved and living my life to spare a thought for my dad, who couldn't even support my decisions. I also told him that he might have been the first to cut me off, but now I never want to talk to him or see him again, and he's finally getting his wish. I thought that blocking him from everywhere would make me sad, but surprisingly, I feel fine. I'll pray that it'll be like that for the rest of my life. NTA, you don't owe anyone anything. It was your parents' job to raise you, which, to be honest, they failed at. And they don't own your life just because they took care of you. NTA, nah, because your dad is definitely the only a-hole here. Good riddance. And as long as you're happy with your partner, that's all that matters. I feel like this situation is ridiculous, but here it is. I'm a 28-year-old female, my brother, 29. Birthday is coming up, and I wanted to get him a really cool gift since it's his 30th. I mentioned to my husband, 49, that I was going to go shopping for a present this afternoon, and he told me to keep it under $200. I didn't really think about it much and went to the store. I ended up finding an Xbox, one X for $500. My brother has wanted one for ages, and they're hard to find, and I knew he would be so happy if I got him this. So here's where I may be an a-hole. I bought the Xbox. I came home and showed my husband, and he was pretty pissed off. I tried to explain my reasoning, but he just cut me off and said that since he's the one who works, it's his money, and I shouldn't have spent that much when he told me not to. I argued that it was something special and I wouldn't do it again, and that we have more than enough money, but this won't even make a dent in our finances, which is true. He's a doctor and makes more than we need. He just kept yelling about how I don't work, so I had no right to do that, which I think is a little unfair. He got pretty mean about it, too. He's barely talking to me now, and I'm just sitting on the couch on Reddit while he occasionally glares at me. I get it's his money and I went overboard, but I knew my brother would be really excited and I wanted to see him happy. So, am I the a-hole here? For some background info, I'm a stay at home mom for our kids who are too young for school, which is why I don't have an income. He spends ridiculous amounts of money on whatever he wants and ignores me if I question him. So, he isn't the frugal type. NTAOP, the information you've provided in the comments is important. This is a man that doesn't let you work, then controls every dollar you spend while he happily drops $35,000 on a boat and ignores you when you question it. He is the a-hole, and if he has $35,000 to spend on a boat, $300 should be the least of his worries. And to everyone in the comments saying it's his money, no, it is legally and ethically not just his money. They are married, and she stays at home to take care of his kids and one of her own. And so his money is for the household, and she is entitled to a lot more in compensation for being a stay at home mom. Normally, I would say everybody sucks because financial decisions should be partner decisions, and you broke that rule. But his attitude is so shitty, I can't. He's decided you're slave labor. That's what it's called when you don't get a wage and do a 24-hour day job. You are not equal in this relationship. I suggest you start invoicing him for the cost of a live-in nanny and housekeeper. Don't settle for a crap wage either. That, or you go get a job and have him figure out the logistics of not having you home, since you have no rights unless you have an income. I would also suggest figuring out how to set aside some money in a private account so that you are not so dependent on him. NTA. My daughter, Amara, 22 female, recently had her first child. I missed the birth, and a lot of drama has gone down since. Amara had a difficult pregnancy pretty much from the beginning. Around the 28-week mark, the doctor said she may be able to make it to 40 weeks, but there's a chance she could deliver early. We, myself, husband, eldest daughter Katie, 25 female, Amara, and son, all had a trip planned to an island around the time Amara would be 36 weeks pregnant. When the doctor told us she may not make it to 40 weeks, Amara chose to stay home as to not risk going into labor on the island. A little backstory. The father of Amara's baby isn't in the picture. She's doing this alone. The plan was for me to be in the delivery room to support her. She asked me to please stay home from the trip. I said I'd go, but come home if anything changed. Katie decided to stay home with her. My husband and our son headed off on our trip. Well, then the hurricane hit and all ferries were suspended. That same day, Amara went into labor. We were stuck. No way of getting back to her. Katie was by Amara's side as she gave birth. There were further complications, but thankfully, both she and baby are okay. I got home a few days later and got to meet my granddaughter. Amara barely looked at me. The original plan was for me to stay at her place for a couple of weeks to help her adjust, but she told me not to bother. She asked me not to go for this very reason, saying she really needed me and I put a vacation above her. Katie is now staying with her and is also pissed at me, saying Amara was so scared and could have died. I pointed out I tried to come back and couldn't have predicted the hurricane. They both said I still chose to go, and even if I had rushed back on a ferry, I'd still likely have missed it. AITA? YTA. You knew Ian was coming and arrived 5 days before it hit. You did prioritize a vacation. It wasn't 3 months before, just mere weeks before the due date. You didn't even evacuate as it got closer for your own safety or to ensure you would be there for the birth. Of course, the frickin' ferries were suspended when the hurricane hit. I can't believe that is the excuse you are using. In all honesty, you knew the hurricane was coming. You knew there was a risk of being stuck, and you didn't care. YTA. Birth only happens once. You can usually postpone a vacation and reschedule it for another time. You did prioritize the vacation over your daughter. You knew she wanted you there. She even specifically asked you not to go, and for whatever reason, you thought it would be okay to still leave. No, there was no way to predict the hurricane would hit where you were, but you also could have thought about what you were being asked over what you wanted. I have an older brother, call him Mark. Mark was a solid older brother and he did all he could to look out for me. However, one of the patterns that emerged that he still treats me like a kid, especially when it came to women. My brother is the better looking, more attractive brother, and when I didn't have a girlfriend, he would be hard on me, telling me I need to hit the gym, I need to not dress like a dad. Mark and I used to have a really good relationship, but we lost our closeness after I left for medical school. I was busy, and it was really difficult and expensive for flights. After I completed my residency, I moved back closer to my family and friends where I met my now fiance. After I introduced my brother to her, him and his wife, they gently were trying to get me to break up. They were like, "Oh, you guys don't seem compatible. She's older and has a family already. You should find someone more compatible." I was like, "You don't even know our dynamic yet. How can you say that?" And I really tried to get my brother and his wife to see my fiance as a whole person. And again, initially they were nice and were like, "We have our reservations, but okay if it makes you happy." Then one night, my brother was over our family's house and he was really drunk. And he starts going off. My fiance was not present and at the time was just my girlfriend, and starts going off on how my fiance is with me for my money, that I am just being used for a paycheck, and that when we have kids together, to not be surprised if the baby comes out with a tan. I was like, "Mark, stop." And he just kept pressing on with his insensitive comments. Well, now that me and my fiance are engaged, I did not invite my brother to the wedding. I don't want to deal with him making ignorant comments. My family is telling me to forgive him. My fiance says that she really doesn't want him to come, but if I invite him, she understands. I understand he was drunk, but I feel that he really crossed the line and this is fair. AITA? NTA. Alcohol tends to be like a truth serum. He said what he thought even if he wouldn't say it when sober. He's a racist, and so is his wife. Have an enjoyable wedding without worrying if they would misbehave, and I'm sure they'd be making comments to the other guests. You can forgive, not forget, and still not invite them to the wedding. A wedding is about celebrating the love you have for each other. Anyone who doesn't support that has no place there. Unless you have gotten a very sincere apology and brother has shown his actions match, that you have every right to refuse him. NTA.